here we go. So Schoology, what are we doing today? So I'm going to explain something really quick to you. After that, you're going to go into Edgenuity, you're going to do your quiz, and then that will be averaged for your second major grade, okay? So I really hope that you guys every so often, maybe at least once a week, minimum once a week, you're logging on to you're logging on to Skyward and checking your grades, okay? Because this is not something where like your teachers are on top of their games for sure, but there are so many kids who are not doing what they're supposed to or forgetting or turning in late. So it's a lot for your teachers to constantly have to like look back. Did you turn it in yet? Look back. Did you turn it in yet? So I am one of those teachers where once I put in a grade, I'm not going to change that grade until you email me and say, Miss Riesenhahn, I turned it in. So please, will you change the grade for it? Now, obviously, that's really only for the stuff that have already been in the grade book, right? Because from now on, we do have deadlines, which means that if you don't meet the deadline, you will get a 0. So there's not much I can change with that. But what if I like made a typo? So for example, there's this one boy and he's in my 4th period algebra class and he thinks I have it in for him because he's gotten like hundreds for every single assignment so far, but I keep on mistyping just his. I have no idea why. And I give him ones instead of hundreds, or I give him tens instead of hundreds. And so he's been telling me, Miss Riesenhahn, you mistyped it, you mistyped it, you mistyped it. So please, if I'm like mistyping your grade, please email me and tell me sooner rather than later so that you won't freak out that you have like a 30 in math class or in any of your classes. Okay. So you're doing the quiz today. It will be averaged as your second major grade. Don't forget to take attendance on Schoology. Okay. All right. So let's do this. I'm only going to explain something really quick to you. It won't take me very long at all. And I decided to be happy today and use blue paper because it's not really sunny outside. And I came to school and I was like, it's kind of dreary and I'm sleepy. So I needed something bright to, make us happy. All right. So yesterday, some of you were doing the, the instruction. And on slide number 3, you were like, wait, they're talking about this thing called interval notation, and I don't really understand it. Ms. Friedenhahn has never talked about it, and I don't really get it. So if you were one of those kids, I'm going to spend the next 5 minutes explaining to you interval notation. It's just different. It's not hard. It's just a different way of writing something, okay? We don't teach it in 8th grade because you don't need to know it in 8th grade, but in high school. So once you get into high school, starting from Algebra 2, they teach it to you. But I guess since Edgenuity included it in 8th grade algebra, let me just explain it to you really quick, okay? So interval notation. So far, when we've been writing inequalities, let's say that we get an answer, and we say that the answer is like x is greater than or equal to 28. That's how you've been writing your answers, right? X is greater than or equal to 28. But the thing is, in interval notation, they don't write it like this. So let me show you how they would write it. Well, let me actually graph it first. If I were to graph x is greater than or equal to 28, don't I have 28 here? I have a filled in circle. And since it's x is greater than, that means I would shade to the right. Okay, so this is what interval notation means. Interval notation means what is like from left to right, what is the smallest number you have? The smallest number you have is 28. So I'm going to write 28 here. And then I'm going to write a comma. And what's the biggest number you have? Well, there's an arrow. It keeps on going forever and ever and ever. So forever means infinity, which is basically a sideways 8. So this is how you write interval notation. You don't have to write this down, guys, unless you want to. Okay. And then they have these weird like parentheses and brackets and stuff. So here's the trick. Whenever it includes like a specific number, like it includes 28, you make a bracket. But then infinity goes on forever. That's not a specific number. So if it's not a specific number, then you put a parentheses. So this is what your notes wrote as this. Like these two things, what I'm pointing to right now, this thing and this thing is literally the same thing. It's just 2 different ways to write it. And it takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you get used to the pattern, it's really not difficult at all, okay? So let me try another one then. Let's say you solve a problem and you get x is less than 3 as your answer, okay? The easiest way to figure out how to write it in interval notation is maybe look at the graph first. So if I were to graph this, I have 3. I have an open circle this time. Since x is less than, it goes to the left. So remember, now when I write it in interval notation, I always go from left to right. So my leftmost number, what is my leftmost number here?
Negative infinity.
Negative infinity, right? It keeps on going to the left, so it's infinity, but in the negative direction. So my leftmost number is negative infinity, and then I write a comma, and then keep on going. So what is my biggest number it would get to? Three. So it gets to the 3. So then I write the 3 on the other side. So remember, if it's not a specific number, I write a parentheses like this. So I'm going to write parentheses here because negative infinity is not anything specific. Now for this 3, I also write a parentheses. Wait, but how come I wrote a bracket here? The reason why I write a bracket here is because it included 28. It was a filled in circle. Do you see how for this one, this answer does not include the 3? So it's not that specific. Like it could be, 2.999999999, or maybe just 2.9. So if it's not specific, like it doesn't include that number, you always just put a parentheses. So this is what this answer would look like in interval notation. Okay, so let's just try 3 more and then we're done. Okay, let's say I solve something and my answer is x is less than or equal to 5. Okay, so the easiest way to write it in interval notation is maybe by looking at the picture. So I have 5, I have a filled in circle. Okay, do I shade to the right or to the left, guys?
Left.
Left because it's smaller, right? X is less than, so I go to the left. Okay, so you always read from left to right. So my leftmost number, what's my leftmost number?
Negative infinity.
Negative infinity because it keeps on going backwards. Okay, what is my rightmost number? The biggest number it gets to?
5.
Okay, now let's do like the brackets and the parentheses. Negative infinity, is it bracket or parentheses? Parentheses, because it's not specific, right? I don't exactly know. If it doesn't include that number exactly, it's parentheses. 5, is it bracket or parentheses?
Bracket.
It's bracket this time. The reason why it's bracket this time is because it includes the 5. So since it includes the 5, it's bracket. Are you kind of getting the hang of it? Maybe? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do another easy one before I just kind of overcomplicate your life. Okay. So let's say I solve a problem and this is my answer. Okay. So I have 7. So open circle, shade to the right. Does anyone think they can tell me the 2 numbers, like the first number, comma, the second number? Does anyone think?
7.
Okay, and then?
Infinity.
And then infinity, right? You start from the left. What's the leftmost number? 7. How high do you go? Well, it keeps on going, so infinity. Okay, now let's work on the brackets and the parentheses. What do we think? What is on the left side and then what is on the right side?
Bracket on the left, parentheses on the right.
Close. Parentheses on the right because it keeps on going. But you also do parentheses on the left. Does anyone remember why this time it's parentheses?
It's an open circle.
Because it's an open circle. It's not including 7. You only do a bracket when it's a closed circle and it includes that number. So do a bracket when it's a closed circle and it includes that number. Okay, I have a trick question. What if your answer is all real numbers? Remember, all real numbers, if I were to graph it, it literally, all real numbers means every single number on the number line. So that's what my picture looks like. How do I write that then?
Infinity, and negative infinity.
Yeah, negative infinity, positive infinity. And then would it be brackets, parentheses? What does that look like?
Parentheses.
Yeah, parentheses, because they're not specific. Okay, now I'm going to try to overcomplicate it. And if you don't really get it, that's okay, because you really don't need to know interval notation until 10th grade. But some of you were just curious, and that's why you emailed me yesterday. because you're like, this looks weird. This doesn't look like anything we've talked about before. Okay, so the last one. Starting from tomorrow, you're not going to get easy answers like this, where you just have X and then one number. Starting from tomorrow, you might get something that looks like this. Like where you have X in the center and then you have numbers on both sides. So this problem tells you that X can be greater than, because look at how it's what the alligator is eating. X can be greater than or equal to -2, but it has to be less than 5. So let me just show you right now how I were to graph that. So if X has to be greater than or equal to -2, it's a closed circle because it's or equal to, but it's greater than, so it goes that way. And then it keeps on going. But it has to be less than 5. So less than 5 means it's an open circle, but it has to be less, so it goes that way. So then since like it can go to the right or go to the left, but stop at these 2 points, you basically just connect it with a line. I'm going to teach that to you tomorrow. Okay, but the reason why I'm telling you this now is because let's write that in interval notation. What are my 2 things? Like what's the first thing and then the second thing? So remember, always read from left to right when you want to write it in interval notation. What's the smallest? Sorry.
-2.5.
So -2, 5. Do you see how it doesn't even go to infinity though? Because it started at -2 and it went to 5. Okay, but now I have brackets and parentheses. The -2, is it bracket or parentheses? Bracket. Okay, 5, is it bracket or parentheses?
Parentheses.
Good. Okay. So again, guys, if you don't understand what this, like everything that I did means, you really don't have to worry about it. You're going to talk about it a little bit more in 10th grade. I think it's easy to understand once you kind of get the hang of it, but it's nothing that you have to stress over right now, okay? So today you're going to go into Edgenuity. You're going to do your quiz. Remember, today is Tuesday, so your quiz is due Wednesday night, tomorrow at 11:59 p.m. Please don't procrastinate. I see that some of you haven't done your instruction yet, and that instruction is due tonight at 11:59. So please don't be in the habit of always being one day behind. That's just not a good way to do school, okay?